Before we get started, let's motivate ourselves to listen and to truly learn what this is all about.
So, when we're speaking, we give emotions, and each emotion shows how the word influences and builds up on others. And this is simply not just because of language, it's because of hand movement, gesture, the way you say it. Not only the word, it's the way you interpret it.
She's got a point. She's an icon. She's a legend. And she is the moment. Now, come on now.
Mexico, California, and the Philippines were all colonized by Spain and Spaniards.
Let's say we have Spanish and French. When two people talk to each other but don't understand one another because of the language, there will be a lot of misunderstandings. Same goes for two cultures that believe in different things. This will result in fights. Do you know your history? Do you know how many countries colonized the Philippines? And how do you think the Philippines felt while all of this was happening? Why am I asking these questions, you may ask? That is because in today's video, we will be talking about a story that is related to colonization or the colonized tongue.
Now I know.
So first, a little background knowledge before we dive into Malinche by Laura Esquivel. So, the Aztec Empire had cultural practices that would make the modern man cringe. They practiced slavery and blood sacrifice. It is popularly believed that Aztecs gave way to the conquistador Hernan Cortes because they had an ancient belief that someday their god Quetzalcoatl would come back to their lands in the form of a white man. One of the other reasons the Spaniards were able to conquer Mexico was because of La Malinche or Malinalli, the translator and the lover of Cortes, who also helped in advising Cortes. Today, she is considered both as a traitor to Mexico and a temptress.
Laura Escobar was born in Mexico City in 1950. Her first novel, Like Water for Chocolate, has sold more than 4.5 million copies around the world and remains on New York Times bestseller list for more than 1 year. She currently lives in Mexico. Hernan Cortes was a Spanish conqueror or conquistador, best remembered for conquering the Aztec Empire in 1521 and claiming Mexico for Spain. He also helped colonize Cuba and became a governor for New Mexico. Maria, or Malinalli, more popularly known as La Malinche, was a now woman from the Mexican Gulf Coast known for contributing to the Spanish conquest of the Aztec Empire by acting as an interpreter, advisor, and intermediary for the Spanish conquistador Hernan Cortes. Enter, she was called Malinche, in the Mexican tongue, which means twisted grass. In Mexico today, her name symbolizes the very essence of treachery and betrayal. Nearly 5 centuries, and the image of this well-hated figure has been ingrained in the Mexican psyche as the national Judas. In a country more sensitive than most when it comes to the subject of this souvenir, or Mexicanism, is the term applied, everything seems as injurious to Mexico, patriotism, honor, and national pride.
Now this is a story all about
Malinalli's birth, with her grandmother acting as midwife. Malinalli survives her difficult childhood thanks to the love and nurturing of her paternal grandmother, who becomes her playmate, ally, and wisdom teacher. Her grandmother believes that this little girl will be special. She says, "Your tongue will be the word of light, a paintbrush of flowers, the word of colors, that with your voice will paint you codices. Upon her grandmother's death, however, the young girl is sold as a slave by her own mother to Mayan slave traders, but retains her beloved grandmother's belief in the beneficent pre-Aztec god Quetzalcoatl, whose return or second coming would mean the end of the Aztec conqueror Montezuma's practice of human sacrifice. When Cortes arrives, Malinalli believes he is a savior, if not God himself, and is happy to put her linguistic skills to use as his translator, thus creating the role that she will be remembered in the history books for. History paints La Malinche as a powerful woman who stood in the middle between the Europeans, who were trying to rape the land and steal away from the native people their culture and possessions, and the native Mexicans, primarily the Aztecs. Cortes ravishes his interpreter and marries her, but his one and only love is gold. She becomes known as the tongue, but she finds being the tongue an enormous responsibility. Sometimes she gets caught up in the power of it, and other times she wonders if it's worth siding with a man who enjoys violence and stands for the complete opposite of what his name means, to be sensitive and respectful.
Oh, he's kind of cute. He's a murderer, but he's kind of cute.
Cortes sees the conquest of Montezuma and his kingdom as the triumph of good over evil, the true over the false gods, and of superior beings over inferior ones. But the slaughter of so many people results in Malinalli losing her center. Nevertheless, she remains his translator, following her instinct for survival despite the possibility she may anger her gods. After Malinalli watches Montezuma give up his kingdom because he has faith in Quetzalcoatl's return, she realizes that Montezuma has experienced a spiritual transformation, but also has made a terrible mistake in placing his faith in Cortes. As Cortes consolidates a murderous stranglehold over Mexico, he becomes more monstrous. Finally, Malinalli breaks with him when he requires her to abandon their son in the same way her mother abandoned her. After Cortes marries her off to his captain, she ends up living a happy life and dying a happy death, at one with the gods.
Slay! Slay!
Because Esquivel is less interested in fleshing out the plot than in delineating the belief system of the pre-Aztec civilization, everything that happens to Malinalli is swathed in imagery and deep spiritual significance. In contrast, everything Cortes does is explained as the psychological consequences of his childhood experiences. Now knowing the story, let us answer some guide questions. What is the power of word or the power of language according to the text? Well, I'm going to bring up a quote. Words are singularly the most powerful force available to humanity. We can choose to use this force constructively with words of encouragement or destructively using words of despair. Words have the energy and power with the ability to help, to heal, to hinder, to hurt, to harm, to humiliate others, and to humble.
What's the difference between Malinalli and Cortes's view of the world? There are many differences between Malinalli and Cortes's views on how they both viewed the world. Malinalli viewed the world as it needed to be changed and to be ridden of human sacrifices, while Cortes' Catholic worldview sees the content of Aztec Empire as a good way to find gold and other riches. Why do you think they have different views on the world? Malinalli and Cortes came from different lands where they have their own beliefs and traditions and cultures. But honestly, we take Malinalli's side for this one because it's more justifiable and accurate in the eyes of different people. You can't say that his words are wrong because we define the world as what we see and what we observe. What's the relationship between Malinalli and Cortes? Cortes was often offered other women, but he always refused them demonstrating his respect and affection for Malinalli. Her linguistic ability to assure Malinalli her role as an interpreter, but not only as that. So their relationship was monogamous. Do you think the text was sympathetic towards Malinalli? Yes, the text was very sympathetic towards Malinalli, but then in the end of the story, she had a choice and she took it. So that's all her. How does it change the way people view Malinalli? Overall, Malinalli shows all signs of being a victim. Her actions and decisions may come across as selfish, yet they all relate back to how she grew up. A stressful childhood can affect the way that someone acts and how they are when they get older, but that doesn't mean that the kind of relationship she made was right, but then in the end, it's her decision.